All right, everybody. I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA, and this is my update for Monday, February 1st. There's a lot of snow in D.C. and up the East Coast right now, so both the House and the Senate pushed back some business that would have been done today, but there are still a few stories to monitor as we move into February. I mentioned yesterday that a group of 10 Republican senators, centrist Republican senators, reached out to the Biden White House to let them know they're willing to negotiate on a bipartisan bill. Of course, their ideal bill is very different, namely smaller from what the Biden administration is targeting, something like $600 billion versus $1.9 trillion. So I doubt that Democrats are going to look at this Republican offer as a very serious proposal. And as I've been saying throughout this back and forth, Senate Democrats have the option of passing a bill through budget reconciliation, which only requires 50 votes, with Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, instead of the 60 they would need for conventional legislation. So they don't necessarily have to reach across the aisle to pass a relief bill here, but we'll see what happens. Regardless, Joe Biden wants to show that he's open to these Republican ideas. He campaigned on unity, right? So he is meeting today with that group of 10 Republican senators to talk about their stimulus proposal and see if there's any common ground or any points that they would be willing to concede, since they know that the Democrats can still walk away and pass at least something on their own. Biden has indicated in the past that he's willing to give up ground on some of these provisions, for example, by restricting stimulus checks to people with lower incomes, and that's part of how the Republicans were able to cut costs so significantly in their proposal. Biden's plan includes direct payments to single filers who earn less than $75,000 and joint filers who earn less than $150,000. And like the first two rounds of stimulus checks, these would gradually phase out for people who are above the limit. Of course, Biden has $1,400 stimulus checks. On the other hand, the Republican plan provides direct payments of $1,000 to individuals earning up to $40,000 and joint filers earning up to $80,000, with the payments gradually tapering off as your income approaches $50,000 or $100,000, depending on your filing status. It would also cut extra unemployment benefits from the $400 per week that's included in the Biden proposal to $300 per week. Those payments would only last until June instead of September, as in the Biden plan. So there are a couple points where Biden may be open to meeting them somewhere in the middle, and there are also points where both sides have pretty much the same thing in mind. For example, they both want $160 billion in COVID-19 funding for things like testing, vaccine production and distribution, contact tracing, as well as a sufficient supply of PPE. There's also agreement on $4 billion for behavioral health and substance abuse services. That being said, there are other provisions where the sides are just really far apart, and it's hard to see Biden, much less congressional Democrats, agreeing to the kinds of large-scale changes that would be necessary in order to bring the overall cost down to even close to that $600 billion that these senators have in mind. For example, there's very little for state and local aid, which is a critical piece of the $1.9 trillion stimulus. The Biden plan includes about $350 billion for state, local, and territorial governments, which is more than half of the total bill for the plan that Republicans are promoting, right? If you look at the breakdown of the Republican proposal, their total price tag for everything outside of stimulus checks and unemployment payments is under $300 billion, right? Which wouldn't even cover what Biden wants to give to state and local governments, right? So from my perspective, there are some points that people on both sides seem to agree on, but there's a pretty significant gap on other points. It's going to make it extremely difficult to really find any common ground. In terms of impeachment, you may have seen that Donald Trump announced his new legal team for the second impeachment trial. Some of the lawyers he had been planning to work with left over the past few days. He will now be defended by Bruce Castor Jr. and David Schoen. Schoen is the chair of the American Bar Association Criminal Justice Subcommittee, one of many subcommittees grouped under the umbrella of the Civil Rights Litigation Committee. Some of you may also know Schoen from when he represented Roger Stone during the appeal process, although that ended up being a moot point after then President Trump commuted his sentence and eventually gave Stone a full pardon. Bruce Castor Jr. is a Republican lawyer and politician from Pennsylvania who has served as district attorney, solicitor general, and acting state attorney general after his predecessor was convicted for covering up her own leak of grand jury information. Schoen issued a statement when this news broke, saying that it is an honor to represent the 45th president, Donald J. Trump, and the United States Constitution. And Castor said something similar when he said, "I consider it a privilege to represent the 45th president. The strength of our Constitution is about to be tested like never before in our history. It is strong in resilience. a document written for the ages, and it will triumph over partisanship yet again and always. Now, as I've said a few times, when the impeachment trial comes up, I think it's very unlikely that Trump will actually be convicted of the charge that was set up from the House. And ultimately, his defense probably won't need to do anything special to get him acquitted in the Senate, but obviously competent legal counsel would help convince some of the more moderate Republicans who may be at least somewhat open to an impeachment. And Trump has also put over $30 million into Save America, his new PAC, or Political Action Committee. So it's clear that he is not quite ready to turn his back on politics entirely. There's been a lot of speculation about whether he will run for the presidency in 2024. It's hard to say at this point, of course, but as long as he isn't convicted, there won't be anything stopping him from running for president again. So again, to me, this is much ado about nothing. Yes, the Democrats will vote to convict. Mitt Romney will join them, maybe a few other Republicans, but in my view, it's very unlikely that they will get the 17 Republican senators on their side if they push for a trial. We'll see what happens. It's strange to think about the 2024 election just a week or two after the inauguration, but if Trump decides to run, then he will have a pretty dedicated base of support that will make him a strong force in the primaries. I'll be back with another update, of course, tomorrow with the latest developments on the stimulus and other things going on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.